And for me, and I can only speak for myself, how we fight the things that made Standing Rock what it was is through upholding sovereignty. Sovereignty of self means not shaming myself or others in how we identify, especially as femmes, in terms of our bodies and our cultural identities. It means watching out for and fighting for the many missing and murdered Indigenous women who are lost to violence, the state, or both. It means not internalizing white supremacy and reducing ourselves down to being palatable for white sensibilities. Because honestly, F your sensibilities, that's what's getting my people killed. Sovereignty of body means myself and the bodies of others are to be treated with respect and how we dictate, not anyone else, how we want to be treated. And for me and my community, it means fighting anti-Blackness whenever I come across it, even if it's from other Native people. It also means fighting criminalization that does nothing but oppress our bodies. This is a nation built on stolen land, built by stolen labor. And white people need to own this. You need to say it sometimes to yourself and remind yourself. Sovereignty of thought means treating the thoughts and perspectives of others as valid and not casting judgment on how people react to historic colonial oppression, genocide, rape, and endless brutalization. That also means battling for spaces that are only for us in terms of telling our own stories and the physical spaces where we reserve the right to create as exclusively Indigenous. And I don't mean that as exclusionary to the Black community, because Black folks are Indigenous as well, just to a different continent. Religious and spiritual sovereignty means not criminalizing the practices that are outside of traditional religious constructs, meaning outside of the Christian frame. It also means fighting for the right, like I told you about in Mandan, to pray how we want and where we want to pray. We saw this again and again in the fight at Standing Rock with Sacred Grounds Camp, which was a camp that was set up in the way of the pipeline because the tribe that we were fighting alongside, they gave the courts notice that there were burial sites there. The next day, the pipeline company dug them up. So we set up a camp there. There was also another example called Turtle Island, which you would have seen in this, where it was a big hill and people were swimming across just to go pray on this burial mound that the police were trampling. And we got maced, shot at with rubber bullets. I mean, a lot of people got hurt. And finally, national sovereignty means honoring the treaties set forth between Native nations and the United States government. You know, honoring those treaties will change everything about this place, and if we don't want people like Trump, we need to honor the treaties. You know, the most positive outcome from Trump is the reconsideration and rewriting of the relationship with the government, if we take it. We need our sovereignty to be honored in all of those ways I just mentioned. You know, we need to draw the lines and redefine the relationship, and then we can work together. And for those of you in this audience that think Trump is some sort of new, terrible, bigoted, racist president, then honestly, you're part of the problem. Because no president in the history of this colony has been good for communities of color ever. Period. So, you know, what do we do about it? Endeavoring towards decolonizing our worldviews starts with looking into our own heritages, even white people, because what white people does, or what white supremacy does and hegemony, it removes the uniqueness of everyone. And it transplants this identity that isn't really anything. There's no roots to it because it's manufactured for us. So one of the ways we can move forward is to look into why you do things. Our cultures and our heritage, it's all ingrained into how we act, I point with my lips. That's an Indian thing, And I know that. That's what my people do. But so maybe you eat something on a certain day. Or maybe you wear something on a certain day, or you recognize a certain day. Like, why? All of that goes back to your people. You just got to figure out why, which means to, again, focus on the family, be they chosen or otherwise. Because the focus on the family drives you back to your own people and keeps you out of the way of appropriating others, like culture. And that's something white people do all the time. It drives you freaking crazy. It's like you see a Victoria's Secret model in a headdress. Like, stop. But when we seek to understand ourselves like this, that is where decolonization lies. And this is not about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because people don't even have health care. So many folks are struggling. Black, brown, and indigenous people still aren't able to live without dying at frightening rates. Native Americans, we've been massacred, hung, genocided, shot for hundreds of years, basically since first contact. This whole idea of Plymouth Rock being an amazing thing is a joke. Our nation isn't for the people right now. It's for white people who uphold white supremacy, whether they realize it or not, with immense amount of class and racial privilege, who are asleep at the wheel while we die. Our nation is also for white women protected by the patriarchy who refuse to acknowledge their privilege while we get shot, dehumanized, and denigrated repeatedly. Our nation is for white heterosexual men with inferiority complexes so that they have to have dominion over others, as has been the case throughout history. Even the Christian God dictates dominion over Native people through the doctrine of discovery. We burned the doctrine of discovery in Standing Rock. So finally, I'm not saying anything new. This is a message that people, indigenous, Black, brown, have been saying for literally generations. I'm not presenting any other worldview that isn't already out there. But I do, just in closing, want to encourage everyone to look into how colonies work and understand yourselves as white Americans as colonizers. And from there, then we can work together. Thank you.
Who is you? An angry Black man. Who is you? Have you ever been called a fag and a nigger in the same sentence and not blank? Have you watched your sisters get denigrated, their hair touched without their permission, their bodies? Who is you? Somebody who doesn't need a microphone. My name is Ashton P. Woods. I'm a millennial. Who is you? Does it matter? Yes, it does. Identity politics, perhaps? No, it's not. I'm a founder of Black Lives Matter in Houston. I get stopped by police maybe 3 times a week. Maybe. But that doesn't matter if my sisters ain't free. Why is the focus on that? Because in this movement, Black women lead. In this movement, very few Black men show up. Maybe because we're in jail or dying in the middle of the street while the queers and the femmes and the trans folk are standing up for the entirety of the Black community at peril from the same people we stand up for, while the people sitting in the audience who don't look like us try to tone police us. Who is you? The angry black little boy who started the first gay straight alliance in his high school and was nearly murdered. Who is you? The little black gay boy who got raped at 16 because they put him out because he started that gay straight alliance. Who is you? I am a black man. I have a letter that I want to read to you. Far too often, we say what the problem is, but we get tone policed. We get gaslit. I encourage you to Google what gaslighting is. I'm not going to explain that to you. We spend a lot of our time explaining to people who should know how to check their privilege, who should be willing to step out of their bubbles. Yeah, I sound angry, don't I? I'm pissed. I should be. I have a right to be. I have a right to be an angry black man. And you have shit to say about it. There's an article that I wrote on my website that I wanted to read to you. It's a love letter to white people. One that is not sugar-coated, one that will make you uncomfortable as hell, and I'm still looking for my fucks to give. So, in my letter, I wrote about the fact that as a person who worked on Hillary Clinton's campaign, yeah, I did that in Texas. We had some of the highest turnout over Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012 and 2016. We mobilized so many people that we swept every part of the judicial system that was on the ballot in Harris County in Houston. That's why I'm running for city council in 2019. But what I noticed is, as a member of the Clinton campaign, that when the pantsuit lost, people who would normally be silent got activated and got in the way. Like my indigenous sister pointed out, you take up space that's not allotted to you. Your face is not the face of our movement. We do not need a white savior, nor do we need your permission. Raise your hand if you understood what I just said. Thank you. So, in this letter that I wrote, white people, when we speak or post about you and whiteness in any venue, especially social media, it really isn't intended for you to share or express your opinion about the subject matter. Seemingly, you have this need to have a say, to give permission in order for our black words and thoughts to have weight. Now, that might not be any of you in the audience, but that's what the collective does. Why do we need your validation to say something that's always been true? We didn't ask you. We're telling you. How about that? The fact is that your opinion is not the one that matters. We say what we say without need of your acceptance or approval. Our posts, blogs, and other expressions regarding our experiences with you, even this one, are not an invitation for you to opine a counter-argument. What y'all like to do is spew vitriol, show your fragility, and tell us how we should view our experiences. Y'all don't find that problematic? Even if it's not intentional. You do it. And as some of you walk out, I've proven my point. You don't get to tell us how we process our experiences. Do you understand what that means? Verbally, yes or no? Here's the thing. I'll stop there in that letter. Far too often, we have begged and pleaded for people to be allies and accomplices. We use this language in all over the place. Accompliceship. I'm an accomplice to the trans community. People attack me for it. But without people from the fringes in the front being the loudest, especially black folk and people of color, this movement will go nowhere. But there's a need for black-only spaces when we need to talk about internal issues. And people seem to have a problem with that, y'all. People seem to have a problem with the fact that we need space to talk about how we feel without feeling like we have to front stage ourselves, that we have to censor ourselves because, I don't know, someone wants to play audience. Someone wants to invite themselves. That doesn't feel good. Not at all. I have a lot of white people that I work with. And the irony is we have conversations and we laugh and we look at each other and we roll our eyes because there are people who out there who genuinely think that we hate white people because of the things that we're going through, when simply we're saying, stop killing us. Stop subjecting us to systems of institutional racism, systemic racism. Sakifu pointed this out earlier. Houston has one of the largest school districts in the country, highest dropout rate in the country. Where in this context, the charter schools are actually teaching the children better than the public schools. There's an irony there. I'm from New Orleans. I was born there. They've basically dismantled the public school system after Hurricane Katrina. All of these issues of blackness started for me with Hurricane Katrina. That's where I found my voice. And I started to notice that people didn't like to hear angry tones. They wanted to be talked to nicely. But when did nice ever get any of us anything? The quotes of Dr. King, without the entirety of the context behind what he was saying, fall on deaf ears of blackness because you want to tone police us, because you want us to wear a suit and tie and talk to you from a Bible, because we are supposed to be docile for you to understand where we're coming from. We are not docile, we are angry. There are those who look like me that may disagree somehow. But for those of us who are speaking up loudly, asking, who is you? It's a really valid question. Not who are you, but who is you? That's a question I got asked at 7 years old. Walking down the street with my little football, a woman pulls me to the side while she had her Kool-Aid in her cup and she said, boy, who is you? Who is your people? And I was confused by what she said because I was always taught it's who are you? Who are your people? And in that moment, as a 7-year-old kid, now looking back, what was I really taught about how to look at people who look like me? The internalized anti-blackness of correcting someone's English. The internalized anti-blackness, period. The one that says you have to straighten your hair. The one that says that you should always dress to impress when you're looking for a job. You should always shorten your name. You should always answer the phone like, hello, hi, how are you? Because for someone like me, in my presentation, I'm a walking threat. Before people know who I am when I walk into a room, even black folk do it, they look at me and they clutch their purse. They move to the side. That's internalized anti-blackness. That's internalized racism. Colorism, Pepsi, all of this good stuff that we're finding out is a system of remaining white supremacy. But it hurts. You can't stay angry for a long time. You can't protest all the time. But what I'm trying to figure out is what is my place and who is you? Ashton, who is you? Because now there's a group of people and group of organizations that have popped up, well-funded, and a lot of us in this movement, indigenous, black, Latino, or brown, we're trying to figure out how to survive and how to keep our movements going. Lack of donations. But the Indivisibles and the pantsuits are having events and inviting us and asking us, well, how do you organize this? Show us. You want our intellectual property, but you don't want to pay us for our intellectual property. You don't want to fund us for our intellectual property. You don't want to let us lead. Why is that? Before I leave you, I want to thank for those of you who stayed and didn't leave for whatever reason to hear this and hear these beautiful women. I appreciate you because you're sitting here hearing this. It's not me bashing you. I'm not bashing you. I don't hate you. I don't know you enough to hate you. You haven't done me anything, okay? Remember this when you hear other black people tell you something and you're saying, well, that's not what I mean. That's not what this is. Well, here's the thing. You don't know them and they don't know you. What you're doing may be triggering. I would suggest that you listen to people when they're talking to you, even if you disagree. Just listen. The opinions that you have, okay, that's fine. But clearly, the lived experience of a black woman, a black man, a brown woman, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, matters. Black lives matter. Black women matter. Thank you.
My name is Chris. I'm the Executive Director of the Humanist Center. I'm so thrilled to see you all here today. I hope those of you who are here this morning enjoyed all the comments from this morning's speakers, and I hope you had a really nice lunch. Just a couple of housekeeping things. After this panel discussion, there will be a reception and books available for purchase, and so we encourage you to stay after this panel discussion and to have conversation with the panelists who are able to stay, as well as with one another about what you've heard and learned today, and also to support those folks who are selling books here and read what they've written and learn from them. So it's my great honor to get to moderate this panel this afternoon. I'm so excited to learn from all of you and to hear your perspectives. So we have some questions here to get us started that are shaped by input from the panelists. So we're going to start with some of those questions, and then I've got some questions up here as well that were submitted by those of you who are here this morning, and so we'll get into those after that. So the first question I've got here is, how can we endeavor towards decolonizing our worldviews? What does this decolonizing attitude look like in everyday life? And in terms of sort of structure or format for this panel, rather than directing questions at anyone specifically, I invite you, if you have something to say, to please do so. So again, the question is, how can we endeavor towards decolonizing our worldviews? And what does this decolonizing attitude look like in everyday life?
You know, is my mic on? Yeah. Good. I think some of the other panelists really addressed it earlier this morning in talking about, you know, colonialism and how it impacts life today, and how essentially we are still living in a colonized state. So acknowledging that America was built on stolen land using stolen labor is the absolute first step. And you know, I think in the early 70s, Representative John Conyers introduced a reparations bill in the Congress, and he has been reintroducing it every year, a reparations bill for African Americans, and honestly, until the United States acknowledges that stolen labor, that stolen land, in my mind, there's no way to really move forward. Everything else we're doing is like putting Band-Aids on a gaping wound. And, you know, I would have to say that as an American, I'm complicit in that, and as we all are. But I am willing to stand up and say we must repair the wrongs that have been done. That's what reparations means, is to repair that which has been harmed. And that's a very, I think, unfortunately, it's a very ambitious desire. However, it is not uncommon, right? Holocaust survivors have been repaired. Japanese internment survivors have been repaired. It has been widely acknowledged that that was a wrong. Apologies have been made, and reparations have been given.